Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of From a Woman to a Leader. And I'm so excited to have here with me today, Foram Brown. Hi, Foram, how are you?
I am very well, thank you. I am super excited to be a part of this podcast.
Thank you so much, Foram. And for those of you who don't know, Foram and I met about a few months ago, when I was working with Power to Fly, and we were looking for a VP of engineering because her specialty is actually helping companies hire executives. So Foram, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how did you kind of decide to do what you're doing today?
Sure. So I am a chartered engineer myself. I've got 17 years of experience in engineering leadership at Rolls-Royce and Bombardier. 2019, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and that's when I really decided to pivot my career. I decided to become a matchmaker, marrying companies that are looking for executives and ladies that are out there, women, ethnic minority out there, wanting to either transition from their mid-career position into an executive position or looking for a change within their executive roles. So I decided to marry the two together. And I created my firm right now, which specializes in executive search for women and ethnic minority within engineering and leadership roles.
This is wonderful. This is so important because we need more women in executive roles.
Absolutely. It's the whole diversity, inclusion side of things that if you don't have the representation on the top level, then you can bring in all these young generations within STEM, which is equally important, but you will struggle to sustain them because they're not seeing anybody like themselves at the top. So it's important we start from the top as well as promote the STEM side of things. So that's why we're now on a mission to get 10,000 women in engineering by 2030 and create 1 billion worth of opportunities for them.
Wow, that's a worthy goal.
Thank you.
For sure. For sure.
Challenging, but we can achieve it.
Yeah, I mean, a worthy goal is something that is challenging and you believe you can achieve it. That's great. Yeah. And tell me, Foram, what was kind of the driver for you to focus on that, on hiring women and minorities for executive roles?
For me, it was my personal experience. So there are two elements to it. As a hiring manager, I struggled to get diverse applicants put forward for the roles I was hiring for. So the result of that was, just because you will appreciate in engineering and technology, the engineers and leaders needed yesterday. So there's a lot of rush to get the people on board. And when you have a limited set of people in front of you and the pressure is there to deliver, you land up hiring from those set of people. So when I was in engineering leadership, I knew that there is an area over here that really needs more focus on. And as a female engineer myself of an ethnic minority, I am very much aware of the challenges and the barriers we face within a very male-dominated environment. So that's when I decided to marry the two together, because I know as a hiring manager what I'm looking at, what I need in my organization. And as a woman, I know where we all are, how to find us, how to really make each one of us aware of all the opportunities that are out there so that they can explore things that's just outside of where they are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we are few in general, and there are fewer and fewer executive women. Mm-hmm. Why do you think we have so few women in executive roles?
I think one of the biggest thing is the misconception that there are very few of us, right? Now, that is true, that when you compare to the amount of men out there, the ratio is obviously fewer than the men out there. But there are plenty of us out there. It's just majority of them are not looking. I always give myself as an example. I have got the experience you need, the mindset. I've got the brands behind me like Rolls-Royce, Bombardier. But yet you wouldn't have ever heard of me unless I was being present on social media. So I was busy having my own career, which was very nicely planned in front of me. I had the security that I needed. I was quite honestly trying to juggle family and career. I didn't have the time to look for opportunities outside. I didn't even know a lot of the times what types of roles were there outside, because I was happy where I was. And that's where I feel that it's about creating awareness within this group of women that's out there and getting them to get out of their comfort zone, or maybe just reach out to different opportunities and see, network with different people and create that enabling scenario where they can tap into different opportunities out there. So, answer to your question, I feel that there is biases, whether it's conscious and unconscious, which sometimes stops us. And also, as women, we love perfectionism. So when roles are out there, we are wanting everything to be aligned. We want to be perfect for the role. So there are fewer and fewer applicants coming through.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on a few of the things, because you mentioned so many things. So you mentioned, first of all, visibility, right? I mean, you mentioned that companies that are looking for women for executive roles don't find as many because they are not present. So what would you recommend to a woman that is right now in mid-level management and wants to pursue executive roles? What does she need to do to be known, to be shown?
So the very first thing I always tell my ladies is knowing what you want and where you want to head to. That is a fundamental part, and it's the hardest part to do, because we don't want to narrow a niche down. Our brains think that the niche, the more finer our requirements are, the harder it will be to get there. But actually, it's the opposite. The more niche you have, the more focus you have, and it's easier to transition from your mid-level position to the next position that you're wanting to. So it's very important to think where you are, where do you want to head to? What skills can you take to the next role? That is extremely important. And remember, it is not about you. It is about the customer. Majority of the times we make it about ourselves. What is it that we want? What is it that we can deliver? But actually, you need to think from a customer's point of view. What is it that the role needs? What can I bring in that adds value to that role? So on an average, I say 80%, you should have your experiences that you can contribute to a role. And then the rest, 20%, you're learning something new. And you keep that momentum going. So answer to your question, first, establish exactly what you want to do, where you want to head to. Find a really narrow niche that you can focus on, and then start networking. Start researching what companies are out there looking for the type of roles you're wanting to go to. Who are their potential hiring managers? So for example, if you're going for a director of engineering role, a hiring manager is going to be a VP of engineering. If you're going for a CTO role, your hiring manager is going to be a CEO. Start networking with the potential hiring managers. Get out on LinkedIn. It's a gold mine. start connecting with them, and just build a relationship without an agenda of selling yourself. When you do that, people register that you exist. And when people register you exist, they will come and find you.
Absolutely. You preached the choir here and you mentioned, wow, so much information. I actually had to take notes, so I will not forget. So I wanted to kind of, if it's okay, to double click on the things that you mentioned. So first of all, you mentioned know where you're going, right? Be proactive about your career. Don't just assume things will happen. I mean, for me, I can share that, I kind of went with the flow until one day I realized to take charge. So take charge of your career and decide, where do you want to go? Now the question I would ask, how do I know where I want to go? Do you have some tips for women who are not sure exactly where they want to go? How can they find out what possibilities, because it can be more than one, right?
So it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we've all been through that. We've all been through a scenario where we don't know where we want to head to. And there are two options. One is you want a particular progression within your career. The other is you want to do an entrepreneurial side of things, which are very two different avenues. So I think it's worth establishing what that you do makes you happy. It's important connecting those dots together. Sometimes, so for me, I knew I always wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I needed the stability and security for a certain period of time to be able to get to a position where I could take the risk and start my own business. So I coupled my career with side hustles so that I was learning business whilst I was growing within my career. So it's very important to know where you want to head to. What is it that you do makes you happy? If you're looking at a very corporate career, when I started, I knew that I wanted to be a president at some point if I was going to stay in the corporate world. Then I reverse engineer it. So to me, how do you know where you want to go? It's too much to do with your heart, what you enjoy. Where is your heart telling you you need to go to? And then how do you reverse engineer that? But the key, like I have said, is coupling that with your skills. Absolutely. That is very, very important. A lot of the times, I know I speak to ladies, they commonly don't know where they want to go, but they don't realize that it is the skills that matter to get you to the next step. So that recognition of what you are very good at, and then marrying that with your heart, really helps you identify the next steps you want to take.
Wow, I love that sentence, marrying that with your heart, your skills with your heart. I love that. I love that. Start thinking about how I'm going to create a LinkedIn carousel for that, for our talk.
Hey, yeah. That sounds amazing.
How to visualize that. So, wow, that's wonderful. So definitely, so you mentioned here kind of combining your passions, like the things you love to do, your heart, marrying your heart with your skills. And then you mentioned niching, finding a niche. So tell us a little bit about it. What does it mean to find a niche? Let's say because, I'll take my example. I was a manager, an engineering manager. What does it mean for me to find a niche?
Okay, so it depends. By niche, I mean, what sector are you in? What sector do you enjoy? Where do you enjoy the technology that's heading, advancement of technology? So, for example, I started my career as a systems engineer. Right? I knew I wanted to be in civil engine development space so that I could learn so much about the engine, but in different departments. So I have the breadth needed to become an executive, not the depth, because I didn't want to go down a very specialist technical route. So identifying your niche is knowing what industry you enjoy being it, what motivates you. Right now, there's a huge amount of pressure and things that we do. Not pressure is probably the wrong word. There's a lot that we talk about sustainability. So if you're passionate about sustainability, about keeping our planet safe, about keeping humans safe, then that is a sector you need to look into. Then comes your skills. Are you an aerospace engineer? Are you a technology specialist? Are you a software embedded specialist? How do you marry those skills with the industry that you want? And then within that industry, what do you want? Where do you want to achieve to? So I know recently I placed a CTO in a hydrogen specific aviation industry. Now that's a very specific niche, right? Somebody who knows about hydrogen, but is equally passionate about civil aviation. So that's extremely narrow, but that makes you recognized globally for what you do, and you enjoy doing what you do. When you become a manager, it's you are like a Nemo in an ocean, right? So if you're going from a manager to an engineering program manager, the pool is huge. The ocean is so big. How do you know what you want, where you want to get to? And that industry, where what you are passionate about, coupling all those little bits together will give you the niche.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even add, and it kind of relates to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, networking, is about going to different industry events, right? I mean, and getting your horizons broadened and hearing about things, right? Keeping yourself up to date with what's going on.
Absolutely. And knowing where our industry is heading. So, for example, aviation, the next step is sustainable aviation. So we know the future is really, really good out there. So how do you gradually grow within something that you're passionate about, you enjoy doing, and is the future? Engineering program manager, go get a role within your department that's doing sustainability. So you then get exposure, attend events like you mentioned, get to know what is out there, and start pivoting yourself in that direction. Something else that's really big out there right now is space. Space is huge. Robotics, artificial intelligence is massive. So these are the type of industries that there's a huge demand going forward. Start pivoting, start positioning yourself into these industries by getting to know what is out there. How do you couple that with your industry that you're in right now, but using your skills and strengths and learning?
Wow, this is fantastic. Yeah, so helpful. Yeah, and definitely, I mean, I think that opening up your horizons is super, super important, because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
You don't know what is possible for you because you don't know what's out there. So definitely keeping yourself up to date, like you mentioned, AI, like, wow, this is like the next big thing and everyone is talking about it. But I also like to experiment with different tools and utilize it. I even utilize AI for my podcast.
Yeah.
You mentioned cleaning the audio. So I'm using like a software for that. So just keeping yourself up to date.
Exactly. But a lot of the times I also find that the time is not there to keep yourself up to date. I remember when I was with all these companies, you're working so many hours. On top of that, for me, I had 2 little girls. So balancing all of that, how do you find the time to keep yourself motivated? To know what is out there so that you can pivot, you can transition. And I always feel that, if I could go back in time when I was a little bit younger, I would allocate 15 minutes to start with to just research. That's it, 15 minutes a day, and then stretch it to 30 minutes a day. That's all you need to just research what's the news out there. If you are not sure of your industry, research what industries can I use my management skills in, or what industries can I use my systems engineering skills in. Google, chat, GPT.
Definitely. ChatGPT is like my go-to for pretty much everything nowadays. Yeah, you can ask ChatGPT for sure. And you can also, listen to podcast as you drive or exercise or do other things, wash the dishes, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. There's podcasts, there's audiobooks, there's physical reading as well. All these things that I wish I had spared 15 minutes of my time to do that. And I know when you are in that position, you just feel like I don't even have 15 minutes, but it's important to create that time for yourself, because nobody is going to look after you apart from yourself.
I agree. And I also want to tell all women out there with young children, I've been there. My kids are teenagers now, but I've been there. It's hard.
Yes.
You will miss that period of time where they actually wanted to spend time with you. At least that part, right? I mean, my kids now, they only reach out if they need something, but seriously, I mean, and taking time for yourself is so important.
Absolutely. I almost find that when I take time out for myself, I'm a better version of me for them.
Absolutely.
Otherwise we are there's so much to do and the list is never ending. It never will end unless you make it end.
It will never. I mean, tell me about it. Laundry piles and dishwashers, they go on and on my house.
Oh, it's the same. And then you have the illnesses, you have everything to deal with, juggling, customer requirements and needs and running a business and doing everything. It will never end. But
Yeah,
it's so important to just take that time out.
I agree. And I wanted to kind of go to the next thing that you mentioned. You mentioned about networking, right? Because eventually you want to be known. So if I'm very introverted, and I am, but I'm just kind of talking to some of our listeners. I'm a woman, I'm busy, and I want to meet new people, but I don't know how. A little bit maybe shy, intimidated. What would you recommend?
So it's interesting, I always feel that there are two types, right? One is the extroverts, one is the introverts. Extroverts will not have a problem being present, vocalizing their feelings. Introverts find it difficult. Or they're different. They prefer being in the, I don't know how to say it in a nice way, but they prefer being in the background, right? When you are, for me, when you are looking for an executive position or transition from mid-manager to executive, you don't have to be out there. You don't have to be visible, right? Because think about it, majority of our hiring managers are silent. They're not the ones on LinkedIn commenting and engaging with influencers and stuff. They're people that are watching. They're watching others. So whatever your personality is, it doesn't matter. You can still reach out to them. You can find them. You can reach out to them. And you can send a small note saying, I'm interested, or just something very simple saying, hi, I really enjoy what you're doing with your organization. I would love to connect with you and get to know you a little bit better. That's it. And then you're making it a little bit personalized. You're having a soft introduction, and then you're starting your conversation. So your crucial area is your messaging, whether you're on Twitter or you're on LinkedIn. Instagram, less so for something like this, but I might be completely wrong. Your gold mine is the messaging area. How do you find them now? Once you have a niche, it's very easy because you know exactly what you're targeting. You know what industries you need to reach out to. Again, Google, ChatGPT, find out what are the industries in the area you're in. If you're willing to relocate, You have the entire country to look for companies that might interest you. It's all research, it's all data. And the more data you know, the more people you have to connect with. And once you have that list, you start finding, oh, who is the EVP in this area? Who is the CEO? Don't feel um, don't feel like, oh my God, I can't reach out to a chief operating officer because what are they going to think? I used to feel that, the only thing to remember is they are a human. They are just like you. They have families and they are probably stressed out with work, just like you are, So just treat it as a human to human connection. Forget the job titles. Just use the job titles to find them.
Absolutely. By the way, how do you reach out to them? Let's say I found someone I'm not connected to on LinkedIn. Do you just send them a connection request with a message, or what do you do usually?
Absolutely. You just send them a connection request with a message, but try and find some sort of commonality, right? So when you look at their profile, look at the industries they've been in. You might have a CEO who has worked for big companies or smaller companies like Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, Lockheed Martin, Rolls-Royce. If there is commonality, great. Introduce yourself with some commonality to say, oh, we both worked at Rolls-Royce. What a small world. I'd love to connect with you. So you immediately are creating a little bit of familiarity with the opposite person. If you've got nothing in common and you don't know what to write, just make it very simple. Hi, I really enjoy what you're doing with this company. Would love to connect. I hope you're having a good week so far. ? And your name. Just something so simple, because everyone out there is trying to sell. The last thing you want to do is sell.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that the most annoying thing is that when people reach out to you and want to connect, and immediately after you accepted the connection request, they send you some kind of solicitation. Don't do that.
Don't. It's about having that conversation. But this is where a very targeted niche makes the whole process very streamlined, because you are then talking to people who are relevant. You're not talking to anyone and everyone out there. And you will, it's not a overnight solution that will find you a job. It's a long-term strategy. And all you need to do is just send 3 connection requests a day. That's it. And, yes, you might find it a little bit difficult to start with because you're not familiar with the platform. But the minute you're familiar with the platform, you'll be nailing it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything that is uncomfortable at the beginning, when you do it again and again and again, it becomes more comfortable for sure.
Exactly.
I would want to add something that I use. So the finding commonality is strong one, definitely. And if that person is active on LinkedIn and they are posting or doing different things, what you can do, assuming you liked something that they did, you can actually use that also as a conversation starter. You can say, hey, I really liked what you mentioned here, what you did here, what you posted there. People can see that it's really personal.
100%. I mean, what I would recommend is, if you know someone who's pretty active and has posted, comment before you send a connection request. Comment on their post, because whether they reply or not, they've seen it, right?
Sure.
And then they've registered your name. So when you then send a connection request, they know that you supported them. And it makes the probability of them accepting your connection and communicating with you a lot easier, a lot higher.
Absolutely. And let's say they approve the connection with you. What do you do then? Do you suggest a meeting? How do you continue the relationship from that point on?
So it's very important, again, to stay very focused on what you want to achieve. So if you are looking to become a chief product officer or a chief operating officer, Then you want to have that conversation around operations. What are their challenges around operations, for example? And have that dialogue going between them. But the thing to remember is the more senior you go, the less time they will have to have long discussions. So your communication should follow a similar format where it's short, it's sharp, but not sales.
Yeah.
And then you can go into, my next transition is a COO position. I see you've already been a COO, you've gone to a CEO position. I would love to get some advice on pivoting my career to the next move. Would you be open to sharing your lessons over a virtual cup of coffee? And, you will be surprised how many people are out there ready to help you with this. But one thing you have to remember is not everybody is going to give you a response. So you can't feel disheartened when somebody doesn't reply. Out of 20 people, there might be one who's willing to give you some advice. But that's amazing, right?
Yes, absolutely. And facing rejections actually is part of growth. I believe that in order to be resilient, and especially if you want to get to executive roles, you need to be able to face rejections, which is a great practice.
Exactly. And for me, it's the rejection as a way to learn. So it's, again, as an engineer, it's all about data. When you get rejected, what did you write that, didn't make that person go to the next step? How do you learn from that and tweak it so that it becomes better?
Absolutely. Wow, Foram, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you, how can people reach out to you? What's the advice for you to if people want to connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so it'll be great if you could find me on LinkedIn. It's very simple. It's Foram Brown, and you can follow the content that I normally write on there on a daily basis. If you want to reach out to me directly, there is an email address over there as well, but I'll share it over here. It's, again, very simple, foram@forambrown.com. So you can send me a message. Yeah, and if you want any coaching or any help in terms of identifying how you go from your current position to the next position, just reach out to me and we can take it from there.
Wonderful. And I will post everything also in the comments of the episode. Thank you so much, Foram. It's been a pleasure talking with you today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited about what you're doing with this podcast. It's so important that we share all the things we're learning so that we can expedite this whole process of being more gender balanced.
Absolutely.
Perfect.